All right, so we're going to talk about Nnenna Freelon today. She's an amazing jazz singer. I think we probably both would agree. She's pretty well known, but certainly I could deserve wider recognition, I would say as well. I kind of considered her to be on an artistry level, pretty much up there with the greats. Certainly kind of an American icon in my mind in terms of just being, really a music master. She's had a kind of a pretty large record contract with Sony Columbia early in her career. Then she moved on to Concord. The album that we're kind of most enamored with, both of us, is called Maiden Voyage. The title track is the same as the Herbie Hancock song with lyrics added by, we think, Herbie Hancock's wife, but we're a little unable to verify that. All Music has got some notes on it, but it's a little unclear. And the other album that we're really into is Heritage, but her entire catalog is amazing. She has overtones of gospel. Some of her stuff kind of gets a little bit into neo soul. There's some collaborations with some smooth jazz artists. But generally speaking, she's just a great jazz singer. And within that context, a great ballad singer. With that sort of short introduction, I want to pass it off to you. We've both kind of had a little bit of sort of experience with her in person and seen her live. So tell me about the first time you became aware of her, and then I know you promoted her at the jazz festival that you curated for a long time called Jazz Brevard Music Festival.
Yeah, Nana crossed my trail, and her music came into my consciousness in the 90s, which is kind of like my little decade of heavy impresario work was basically stretched through the 90s. And her records began to appear on a national basis in the early 90s. I think she had some contact with Ellis Marsalis, who, of course, legendary scholar and piano player and patriarch of the Marsalis family, and an unbelievably fine gentleman. And Nnenna had a very different sound for what I remember things being like for jazz singers at that time. And she was also from North Carolina at that time. I think she may still be. I don't know. I haven't really, kept up on a personal contact basis. We just did some presenting and some gig work, maybe 3 times. But that was unusual for me. I really thought that was cool. Wow, really, national recording jazz vocalist artists, and they're from North Carolina. They're not like I left when I was 3 and I live in New York City. It's like this is where she was, and we were in Greenville, South Carolina with Horizon and My World. And I concur with what you had to say, and maybe go a little bit, turn up the volume a little bit. For my money, I guess it could be argued, but I think Nnenna may be the finest jazz singer, of this era, out there now. Her artistry is almost unmatchable in current singing divas. Or
I'm trying to think who maybe Cassandra Wilson.
Wilson's got another spin.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know who I put up there with her.
You got Diane Reeves as sort of the patriarch maybe right now of those that are out there, and of course you got Dinah Krall from that whole scene, and there's many others. But for my money, when it comes down to give me a trio and let me put a song over, Nnenna Freelon's unbeatable. One of her strong points, I think, is her absolute dedication to lyric. Doesn't mean she can't swing. It doesn't mean she can't. She does scat in places and do all the traditional, maneuvers of a jazz singer or a jazz artist. But when Nnenna puts words across, you're in. She's all in, and she's taking you with her. I mean, you listen to her recordings, it comes across. You see her live, it's just unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Get out there with a trio, piano, bass, and drum trio, and just destroy the place and bring it to a pin drop still, no matter where she was playing. Her performance aesthetic is just ridiculous in the most amazing way. I love all her records. that one called Listen with Gia's Garden is just beautiful. Amazing, amazing record. And this one here, Shaken Free, it's this one right here is another favorite. I got a lot of respect for Nnenna Freelon.
Yeah, I really wore that Maiden Voyage record out. Specifically, I love the song Future News Blues.
Yes.
Has a guest appearance by Avishai Cohen, who actually was a graduate of the New School jazz program a few years before I was.
Played a lot with Chick Corea.
Yeah, I mean, truly a, sort of, these, what do they call them, young lions of jazz or whatever the phrase is. I mean, he's definitely like an impressive player. And on that track, he just crushes it. It's so kind of like sloppy but funky. He's kind of sliding in and out of the notes and just really not overthinking. It's not really a pattern. It sounds very impromptu, but in kind of all the right ways. And the song, like you were saying, the lyrics to that song, Future News Blues, are so relevant to current times. Some of them are a little bit sad or ironic. There's one about the ozone being thin in 2017. Of course, the record came out in 1998. So she also has a co-write on there she did with Miriam McPartland. She does a Buffy St. Marie song called Until It's Time for You to Go, which is kind of unusual. She definitely pushes, like you were saying, and something I think we both admire in jazz singers is she chooses interesting catalogs. She doesn't just flip open the fake book or the jazz standard songbook, and she does a version that we're also both really into on that same record of For Women by Nina Simone, who's also from North Carolina. So it's a really cool lineage and connection that's happening between her and Nina Simone, as well as just kind of all those matriarchs of jazz, the Sarah Vaughns, the Ella Fitzgeralds. And that For Women song is bad to the bone. I mean, any singer out there that's looking for, a song to kind of reinvent or make modern, that would just be such a cool song to cover. I've never really heard another cover version other than hers that's really does it justice or is, and then go ahead.
I was going to say, sort of in that same area you touched on, her perspective on social consciousness is unassailable. I mean, she's just lays it down and brings it out up front in both women's perspective, women's issues, relationships, as well as the greater social consciousness of various things that we are all concerned about. And she takes a lot of her available canvas space of a recording and uses that to bring a message, which I think is most admirable and is just beautifully delivered. And and the Maiden Voyage track is itself just a beautiful, beautiful song. Of course, the iconic Herbie Hancock song, and it's one of those just really, really, I call them sub ballad. I mean, they're just almost below ballad level in terms of the tempo and the vibe, and it just brings this story or brings this narrative or tableau or whatever it is that is being laid out there. And I'll say Bob Mintzer brings so much to this record on various reeds: tenor, bass, clarinet, in a couple places rather beautifully. I think soprano, and he's got that just totally burnished, beautiful sort of Wayne Shorter, Coltrane, Bob Mintzer thing that he does. I mean, a lot of people might know him from the Yellow Jackets, but he is just a saxophone player of the utmost level, in my opinion, when put in the right setting. And this is definitely one of those. His interaction with her and the arrangement and the commentary, shall we say, that he brings is just beautiful.
Yeah. Like all the artists we talked about, and I think all artists probably in general, there's like these sweet spots in their catalog where they hit. Sometimes it's a producer, sometimes it's a record label, sometimes it's maybe a moment in their lives for a period of years or a band they're playing with. A lot of times maybe it's a combination of all those things. Like with Kevin Welch, you might say, hey, the Dead Reckoning kind of period, right? That's like our favorite, just personally. And like all artists we're into, the whole catalog is cool, by and large. But there are these moments that happen. And with her, I feel like it's like the Maiden Voyage Heritage albums, although again, all her stuff's cool. And the Maiden Voyage thing, I think, is a lot because of Micah Bene, who we talked about before we started recording, who I actually had some contact with at the Manhattan School of Music Jazz Festival summer thing, where I played with Mincer and Dick Oath, who's also on the album, and just had a lot of reverence and respect for those guys, especially at the age I was at. It was very intimidating, very hallowed ground. And the fact that I already knew they were on that record was really cool. And I just felt honored to play with them. Micah Bene, I think, is kind of a musical genius, and he really brings the record to life. The orchestration you're talking about, all that stuff is kind of him. There's just some really cool, thoughtful moments. All the stuff she chooses lyrically is cool. And then on Heritage, I was searching through her catalog because she is such a great ballad singer. You're right. Like, that is her wheelhouse, like just the sub tempos where she just commands a room. And it takes a really special performer with a lot of authority to do those low tempo, just, hear a pin drop kind of moments where they're not hiding behind a lot of like, sort of like Buddy Rich, Las Vegas jazz, where, you know what I mean? She doesn't do that at all. And she does have a perspective and a message and kind of a pathos, or whatever you call it, like behind what she's doing, But the one thing that I wanted to hear is, what does she sound like when she's doing an up tempo, just kind of like a cooking jazz song, And I went through her catalog, and she does have some of those that are amazing. Like, she does Comes Love, All or Nothing at All. She does Infant Eyes, which is not a fast tune, but some of her standard material is incredible. It just kind of seems like at a certain point she sort of grew out of that. Like, she did her Sony Columbia thing, where it sounds to me like they were really trying to make like a jazz singer out of her, And then when she went to Concord, I feel like we hit that, what I'm talking about. You kind of hit that sweet spot where she still had a big enough budget to do great records. She gets Micah Bene, she gets Bob Minster, she gets Dick Oates, all these types of, she had Peter Washington on there. We talked about some of the other players. But she probably had the creative freedom to maybe do something that's more truly who she is as an artist. Because when I listen to those records, Heritage and Maiden Voyage, I hear like a personality, and not just like a jazz singer. Even though she is, I think, for my money personally, at the master level in that regard. But what in closing, what else would you like to say just about Nnenna Freelon? I mean, I know she did one of your all-time favorite versions of Gingy, right?
Yeah, that's the story I want to tell. Is when we were producing the Jazz Brevard Festival up in Brevard, North Carolina. It was at this beautiful outdoor, it was like a Tanglewood. It was so hot that particular day. It even in the mountains, it was just, as they say, hotter than the hinges on the gates of hell. And this was a open air but covered shed, beautiful setting, lawn on each side. I don't know what you could remember, 1,500, 2,000 people when it was, and it was largely filled up. There was a lot of people there, and Nnenna comes out, is doing her set. Since I'm such a big fan, I came out from whatever I was doing backstage, and I got a seat out front, and I just kind of watched. And she brought out this version of the JOBIM song Gingy. And it felt like it was 105 degrees out there. It might have been, and the place just fell still. It's like the earth stood still, and that's not a song that one can easily dally with. It's either like genius or like, oh, this is bad, cabaret bar, kind of thing. But she and her group and her delivery of that song, I just felt like I was in South America somewhere. I don't know how to describe it. It was like time stood still. I don't know how to say it. And I can still hear it now in my head. And for that, Nnenna Freelon, I will always be grateful, having crossed trails and worked with you several times. And I hope you're out there wowing the audiences and stilling rooms, commanding an audience, as Aaron said. We're there with you. Whatever you want to sing, I'm listening.
Yeah, that is one of the all-time great JOBIM songs, and one of the great all-time great melodies too. Such a beautiful song. Amen to all that. I couldn't have said it better myself, so we'll leave it there. And yeah, Nnenna Freelon.